All right, everyone. Welcome to Headspace Live, guys. This is our weekly live show where I either do this solo or with my buddy Brandon Nicely, who's in the studio with me, in the virtual studio with me. And we pick a few topics to talk about, and we just sort of no censorship, no editing. We just go with the flow and see what happens. So if you're watching this, it's going to be a good discussion. We have three things to discuss with you today. If you're tuning in, if you have questions, if you have comments, if you have derogatory remarks, leave them in the comment section. Welcome to Headspace Live. All right. Hey, dude.
Hey.
So today I
have a derogatory comment.
What is it? Tell me.
I was just kidding. I thought that was an interesting intro there. Okay.
Yeah. If you have something,
we're welcoming all comments, right? Good.
Absolutely.
Also, good.
Yeah.
Bad, ugly.
If you disagree with us, that's totally fine.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I have three things on the agenda, three talking points you and I can talk about, and every time we do this live, we can fill an hour very, very easily. But today we're a little bit limited, so we're going to try to move along, share good stories, and hopefully add some value to those who are listening. So today, the first one I have is pursuing holistic success. What does that mean exactly? Why do we talk about it quite a bit? Why do we believe in it? And by holistic success, let me just frame it a little bit. It's beyond the classic things, right? Health, wealth, whatever else, what is holistic success? Is it important? Why is it important? Let's open the floor for any. I have all kinds of stories and illustrations. I'm sure you do too, but what do you have?
Go ahead. Okay. Well, I think I would probably, let me throw a little bit of a curveball. Maybe a slight little curveball with a little lob, so it's easy to hit, not a big one. I think that, when you framed it as holistic success, what is it, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we're not really clear about what success looks like in general.
That's right. Yeah.
In our lives. That makes sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us, and let me just speak to myself. I guess most, I'm probably the only thing I'm expert about is probably, my experience. And so I think that, growing up, it wasn't really something that I aspired to.
Yeah.
What is success? Honestly, I was trying to navigate from one day to the next, one year to the next, and trying to figure out, trying to do well on what I was up to, whether it be playing football or whether it be studying school. And then I didn't even know I thought I expected to go to college on a scholarship, right? I wasn't thinking about money, but then when I had a pretty severe injury, that derailed that. So I had to hustle and think about, how do I get to college? And so to me, I think sometimes I would say in my experience, there's these tactical sort of moves that we make, sometimes only, 2 and 3 steps ahead of ourselves. And so when I think about it, I think it's a more mature person's game to look back and say, what is success? So, what does success look like? And I think that, so to me, I think success was originally survival.
Yes.
I think there's that
I agree.
feeling.
I agree.
Isn't there that feeling like when you're a teenager or maybe early adulthood, you're like, I'm not going to survive. You have to actually hustle because you've got to make money, you've got to be able to pay the rent and, all that kind of stuff, right? But I think that when you get a little bit older, then you start getting above the game of just day-to-day survival. And then you start looking around, maybe what's available and what else would I like to add to my life. But for me, tactically, it was, education, which as a means to, to a decent opportunity. Then it was probably dating. Then it was probably, there just were only so many dimensions, I think, at that point. Then it wasn't until I ran into some walls, some difficulty, I would say, right, where I felt it. I felt a very obvious need that my life isn't going the way that I don't like this direction. I hit a wall, it hurts, right? I don't want to go that way. So you sort of adjust. And so it's funny because I don't think we're, well, at least maybe just for me, when I was younger, I wasn't all that conscious about all these sort of dimensions, right? But
Yeah.
it's such a great story. It's such a great question to pose because it makes you think. And I think if I'd had somebody that helped me even ask the question, what does success look like for you? I would have
Mm-hmm.
had to ponder that a little bit, right? So I think the first, for me, I think the first framing of this is sort of the awakening moment that we have a choice. Does that make sense? Like we have, I think sometimes we're just programmed from our parents and we develop early adulthood and you're sort of like on a track of survival. And then, maybe a few adjustments, but in general, I didn't feel like I had the freedom to really sit back. And I don't think it was until much later when I thought about what success really looked like for me.
So you were basically going from motion to motion. It was really more, you didn't have, basically you didn't have this inherent like I need to be something, from birth. You didn't have that drive originally, right?
Yeah, I did. I wanted to be Jacques Cousteau, but that was
Well,
the only we
who
all wanted
didn't
to
want to
be
be Jacques Cousteau?
we all wanted to be Jacques Cousteau and to be an oceanographer. But honestly, I had to say that it was one of these conversations. Okay, I'm good at math. I'm good at science. What can I do that I can use those? That's a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
relatively easy path to make money. And then I sort of get into that situation. I'm like, oh, this job kind of sucks because I'm
Sure.
traveling 6 days out of 7 days a week, traveling around with optical time domain reflectometers and fusion splicing kits. And that's no fun to travel with big suitcases of stuff in your middle of Crookston, Minnesota, in the middle of winter, and it's 70 below zero, and I'm trying to splice little fibers together. I mean, to me, I'm like, all right, it wasn't until you're in that situation that you're like, okay, this isn't something I want to do long term, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm wondering about you. I mean, is it something that when you were younger, put yourself in the shoes of your
No,
19-year-old self?
no, no. Yeah, I was,
Were
well,
you thinking about what
I
success looked
was
like? Okay.
at 19. I was already doing that. Yes, because I think originally because I'm a refugee, I was like it was just really existing. I didn't think ahead. And I think most young people don't think ahead. A very few go, this is what I'm going to be doing for life. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously. But I think when I was in college, and I was already in college at 19. I was like year two, and I was going, do I want to do this? I was a economics major, and then I was very musical. I'm like, what if I can do music? And that was probably around the age where I started thinking about it. Going, what if I'm a musician? Maybe I can be like those people that I admire. Maybe I'll be famous. And it was it
So
was
what's the decision path? Once you had that interest,
yeah.
how did you go from interest to this is going to lead me to success? Or was that even in the
It
conversation?
not at 19. No, I think I was closer to like 2021. I graduated. I was still sort of curious about it, but not like I don't even know. Like with music specifically, the percentage of successful musicians is like very close to zero. So I
Yeah,
was I was
it's
sort
the
of curious. I was like hanging out with musicians. I was sort of the entourage. Like I was music entertainment adjacent. That's what I was. I got my first break, but I did have a decision. It's almost like having a startup right now is when you go, you know what, I'm gonna start actually doing music and earn, and see if I can make something happen. And I was
and you
22 years.
placed yourself in places to where
I
you would
did,
be
yeah.
around.
I was 20. I think I was 22 when I decided. I went away. I was in Chile. Like I went on a retreat. I went into the mountains to think. I was very much into New Age and meditation, and so I was
Mhm.
like very sort of New Age, Eastern philosophy, spiritual. And I was like, gosh, like I'm so bored with this the very idea of going into finance or international trade, like my peers are going into, like, or being like some of my peers went into academia. They were economics professors. That's what they wanted to do. and I was just I can't even stand the thought of this. So, and I wanted to dancer, and I was, I wanted to do music and be on stage, and it was just crazy. And I basically into the mountains, and I was hanging out with some friends, camping in Chile. There's a valley called the Elqui Valley, and up north. And I was there, and it's gorgeous out there. And I was like, I remember the moment where I was just staring into the night sky, and you can see the Milky Way. And I said, you know what? If I don't try now, I'm never going to try, and I will regret it for the rest of my life if I don't try. And that's it. I was just sort of there, and I'm like, yep, I'm going to go after it. And the thing is, when you're that age, you have no overhead. You can eat out of a can, and, like you can live on nothing and be fine. And that's exactly what I did. I went home, and I started like really pursuing it, and I put myself in the orbit of people who I wanted to be close to.
But I'm guessing that your cognitive process wasn't one of success, therefore I want to do something I enjoy, therefore I'm going to do music. It was more like, hey, I like music, and
Yeah,
let me
yeah,
just try it. Let me figure it out. Like,
yeah.
right?
It was reckless. It was
It
reckless
wasn't
abandon.
success driven. Probably that was my point. I don't think success in my mind was really a thought.
But eventually, I think it becomes, and that's sort of
Till
why.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I sort of brought up this as a talking point, is that you sort of start, you feel your way through life, and then
Yeah.
the world starts rewarding you for your outer game, whatever the outer
Mm-hmm.
game. So in your case, it would be math and engineering and things like that. In my case, I went after music, and all of a sudden I got rewarded. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I think
Mm-hmm.
I'm better than I thought I was. And I think that happens with most grown-ups, is that the world rewards us for outer game stuff, and then we double down on the outer game, and double down and double down, and next thing we know, we have more responsibility, more money. You get married, you have a kid and a half, and a dog, and a Labrador, and a mortgage, and then now you're doing something because you want to keep doing it, and people say this is the right, you're doing so well, especially if you're doing well, right? You get rewarded by the world, you get respect, you get status, you get money, and then you keep doing it, and you wake up, 35, 40, 45, and you hate your life, your health is not good, you're not happy, and you're actually not good at your job anymore because you hadn't enjoyed it for a long time, so you don't obsess over it. And what do you do now? I talk to people like that almost every week. That's why I
Mm-hmm.
brought it up.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I mean, I think that we're kind of approaching the same topic and from a different direction. I think that, for example, do you remember that startup we helped a while back that was doing high dimensional sort of analysis to figure out what job you might be best at?
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
were great. They were great, right? And so, but it was interesting because it's really like, there's sort of the navigating through the woods. You sort of figure out where opportunities are. A friend says, hey, have this opportunity, could come work with me or whatever. And there's just sort of ad hoc sort of life, right? And then there's, an approach that you could take that sort of says, hey, I have these skills, I'm really good at this. And then, and maybe you'd be, I'd be good at that. And so I find a lot of times when I'm mentoring people, there's at that level, there's a lot of value in having visibility over a long haul and looking back and talking to somebody who's young and helping them realize that there may be opportunities where their skill set could actually match. And so to me, I think there's an awareness, I guess, or a consciousness. And instead of, this comes back to mentoring. I mean, the value of having people in your life that have different views and different access to people and networks and things. But
True.
you have to have, you have to go beyond when you were talking about the holistic, side of success. That sort of presupposes that there is a desire for success, right? And then there's this need to think multidimensionally, or at least think beyond just survival. And I think
it's true, but I do think that we have pulls, right? Like you, and I mean, you don't get perspective until way later in life. But that's, I think, to your point, if you have people around you who are wiser, they have different points of view, they can really center you. But most of us, who listens to who looks for wisdom at age 25? Nobody, you know.
Yeah.
We just don't.
Or
Right?
you're talking to the wrong people.
You're talking to the wrong people. Yeah, your peers who know nothing
Yeah.
about life anyway,
Yeah.
right? And that's why we get pulled into these sort of perceptions of success that are, you get caught up with it. And the thing is that vortex. That's what just fascinates me, is that you come out of that vortex and you see people. I mean, I have people that in their 30s that come out of it and go, what am I doing exactly? I'm actually super unhappy, right? But most of the time, because of the obligations, because of the status, because it's sort of momentum.
Yeah, you're invested, right?
You're invested.
Maybe in a career, and you think, how
Exactly.
can I jump ship halfway through?
You're pigeonholed by the financial sort of rewards of it, by expectations, by fear sometimes of switching lanes where you're not sure if you're going to be that good when you switch the lane. I actually had a conversation with a gentleman, because I have these as a coach. I get people call me maybe 2, 3, 4 times a week. I have these conversations, like long conversations about life. And this gentleman, brilliant gentleman, and he goes, I feel severely unhappy at my job. I make very good money, and he's in the maritime business. And he goes, and I'm severely unhappy. I'm anxious because of it, and he's in the early 40s, and he goes, I don't know how to change lanes. I feel like I'm stuck in this. And he didn't tell me that, because we had this one long conversation. It was great. He was very vulnerable. And then the next day after our conversation, his wife said to him, actually left, and then told him she's leaving him. And he called me back with just brokenhearted. And but I see that all the time, right? It's too little, too late, because you didn't look at life in a holistic way, right? I mean, I wasn't married, but I had a very similar experience. I came back from a long tour and my apartment was empty. My girlfriend just moved out with my young child, and I was just sitting on the floor in an empty apartment, thinking, okay, what just happened, and how did I get here? And I think that's what I mean by holistic success, is that I was so consumed by that one thing that I was pursuing, that I was having a lot of success in. I was under investing in other things, in the things that are actually really important. And then you underinvest, you get anxious, you get depressed, you get really confused. And then the very thing you idolize, that you hyperinvest in, you're not as good at, because you're so unhappy.
Miserable.
Right? Yeah, so miserable.
I can connect with that one. I mean, so I think that now we're talking about overinvesting, or the reality of what happens when you overinvest in one dimension to the, and then you have these other dimensions that are really important, but then you're not investing in. So I think that, to me, is sort of a classic. You can outrun. You can, especially if you're successful in that one area, it feeds you, right?
Yeah. So you get rewarded.
Yeah. And this whole idea of entrepreneurial ventures, right, is classic in this area. A classic example of potential. Very easily, you can overinvest in one dimension. And you actually are rewarded, and you're honored for your overinvestment. I used to sleep on the network operations center floor, literally, all night long. I wasn't just for a nap but I was up all night, working on new things and inventing stuff. And that was not normal.
It's not sustainable for a long time. I mean, I think for a short period of time, that's totally fine, right? You're starting something new. Yeah, absolutely, man.
But I think what I lacked was people around me.
That's right. Yeah.
That would give me, that had a mirror, had the courage to say, Brandon, what about your wife and children? And
yeah.
It goes back to this thing about, and I know we've talked about this a number of times, the burning the ship
Right.
mentality, right?
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah.
we sort of
Burn the ships. Yeah.
we attack the mountain. We decide to burn the ships because there's no going back.
Yeah.
But then you ask the question, where's your wife? Where's your kids? Where's your family? Where's your friends?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And it's classic. But it's, I think to your point, the holistic success is so important. And I would say from my, in the way that I think about it now, it's like, how do we have intentional, right? How are we intentional? And
Mm-hmm.
what's important to us? I think that's, there's just another level of maturity that comes, I think, over time. But I think a lot of us sometimes don't find it
Mm-hmm.
until we have a wake up moment where your car runs into a wall, or you're,
Yeah.
not literally, but figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
And you have sort of this, for me, I wasn't smart enough. And I mean, to sort of stop things before I hit the wall. I would run, and then sometimes it wouldn't be me; it would be the market. The
Right.
telecom meltdown, a complete meltdown of your entire world that you were playing in.
Mm-hmm.
To wake up and say, "Oh, okay, now what am I going to do? What's next?" And um, but then here's the classic sort of, I think, challenge is you do one thing well, and you think that you have to do that, go back to that to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're
Because
successful at a
yeah.
certain level, let's just
Mm.
say, level 10, then you've got to reach level 20. That's just what you do, right? And
Yeah.
so I
Mm-hmm.
think that is sadly a recipe for disaster, especially for family and for the balance or the holistic side of being happy, right? And so I think if you correlate being successful with, you know, that's what I mean. Like, we have to define what success is, and everybody defines it differently. But I think for me, that looking back on, I wish I could have talked to my younger self at 25 and told him these 5 things, right? Like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you have to, that you can. It's like, I like that adage that says, basically, walk slow, go further,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? As opposed to charging off the high end of the diving board,
Yeah.
which was kind of classic thing. But I think that you have to think about, like, but it's not everybody that thinks about life in a holistic way, to your point. See, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's so native to you because you think this way. But
Well,
I guess the
I sort
point
of
I was making was
I
it's not native to many people.
it's
And I
not.
think that's why this is so needed, right?
I think for me it was. I don't think it's native. I think I just happened. I was lucky enough to get hit over the head so hard so early because my that like walking into an empty apartment thing was, and losing my daughter, to she walked away, cut me off, and I was just heartbroken. And I was 26 at the time.
Hmm.
And so that was when I was like, you know what, I don't know how to live. Like, and I think it is native in the sense that it was early that I developed an interest in it. I was, I just had this profound craving and that for a more whole way of being, and
Hmm.
I was very aware that I don't have the slightest idea on how to do that. So I became interested in sort of this holistic success idea, and it started with faith. So that's actually a great segue into my next question. But from that moment, my lucky thing break was that becoming obsessed with it at age 26, when most people don't become interested in that in maybe in their mid 30s, maybe early 40s, something like that. Some people never get interested in that. But to me, I really became like, I was obsessed. I was like, you know what? I suck at like this and this and this and this. I'm going to figure it out. So, which actually brings me to the second question I wanted to talking point to bring is faith still important? And the reason I want to bring it up is because my jolt back into wholeness started with just faith, with becoming a Christian, studying the Bible, and to me, I still hold it as sort of the core, the meta thing that happened to me. That everything was downstream from there. And the way I explain it to people that are, perhaps, religion, I don't know, in these modern days, the way I explain it is this: I go, look, if why is faith important? I think it's important to everybody to at least consider spirituality and that you're more than just a physical being. Is that imagine if there's a creator and he is good and he has plans for you that you actually not fully aware of, and has those plans for you. He will support you in and empower you and give you supernatural abilities in that specific area. Furthermore, he will protect you, he will guide you, don't go here, go here, and give you dominion, right? Give you the ability to have impact in life. Well, what that tells me is it elevates my sense of self personally, my self-worth. And it also makes me very interested and hungry with that creator, with the divine, and to find out what is that dominion, where should I go, where should I not go, and really interested in that supernatural help that he provides, right? Because like if I have that help, I'm going to do really well in life. So to me, it's crucial because it elevates our self-worth. It gives you this voice that guides you, and it gives you, it's not easy, it's not super clear. It's sort of a puzzle that you put together over time, but it gives you this crisp understanding of life, priorities in life, things you should do, shouldn't do, where you should go, not only broadly as a human being, but me personally. And that is super powerful. And I've seen this work in my life. I've seen in your life and other people's lives that, gosh, when you tap into the source, your level of impact, of joy, of alignment, almost like this cohesive view of yourself and how you fit into the broader picture of the world is transformative, right? So my question is, why wouldn't you have faith? If that's the case, it's such an amazing thing. Now, obviously, all of ours actually experiences in religion or spirituality are very mixed. Some of us, and probably most of us, have some sort of traumatic experience because any faith involves people, and people are messed up, right? And then sometimes we're the source of the mess in the first place. So how do you navigate that? But I just don't. I think that does not disqualify faith as a core thing for success and for a flourishing life.
So if you ask the question, why is faith important? Yeah. Right? Like, it's, I mean, I'm so blessed to have been raised in an environment where I was aware of the Bible, of God, of good people that were trying to follow him. And I just never gave it a wholehearted attempt, I would say, right? Because I was busy with my life.
Yeah.
Sports and football and basketball and baseball and whatever. I mean, just wrestling, just all year round. It was just one thing after the other, and girls. And, so it wasn't, the cool thing about faith is it's not really important until it is.
Yeah.
Reality is, I mean, there's I hit a wall. I mean, it's funny how God has this great patience. I mean, you can do whatever you want. He gives us complete freedom to make our own choices.
Yeah.
Free will is a beautiful thing, and it's a tragic thing as well sometimes. But I think, it was, my story. But after waking up and drinking way too much one night, I just realized my life was heading, and I'd hit the wall. Literally, this is just crazy. I'm bouncing people out of, I was a bouncer in a nightclub back in John Travolta disco days, and it was
wow. Yes.
And so I was just drinking so much because I had, it was part of the job really, and accumulated. And then so basically, to me, I hit the wall, and I realized that I needed to change, right? And I wasn't clear what I was going to do, but I thought, I knew enough to know that this isn't working. And I think sometimes we have to have those moments where, it's very easy to cognitively sit back and say, well, God, this, or I don't know what I believe and all of that. But when your life hits the wall and you realize that you're totally not going in a good direction, right? Then you start asking questions in the right way. Okay, let me just open myself up to some things, right? And so I actually did. I went through the whole journey. I studied the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran. I did a bunch of. I delved into the same thing, sort of kind of Eastern religions, etc. And it wasn't until I actually started reading the Bible that I found peace.
Yeah.
And so peace and joy are the two things that sort of are my rudders, right? Without peace and joy, I don't, then nothing else really matters. And it made sense. It was intellectually consistent. I mean, there was tremendous depth of work and so much. I mean, certainly if God is real, then he should be able to make himself known to us, right?
Yeah.
And so I think he has, and that's the beautiful thing. So it was amazing to switch from hitting the wall to, over some period of time, really feeling this tremendous amount of peace and joy. And honestly, it didn't matter what I did.
Exactly.
You get to that point, right? It doesn't matter. I don't care if I push a broom, or if I'm, in some great professional job. I was happy. And so I think that peace and joy and happiness is really the outcome. It's how we're built, right?
Yeah.
And so that to me it doesn't matter. Well, it doesn't really matter unless you want to be happy.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you want to have a life that actually is fulfilling, and you want to have guidance and direction and be successful.
Yeah.
It's like, I love this when Jesus talked about, if you hear my words and you put them into practice, you're like a wise man who's dug a big, deep foundation and built a house on a rock, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the winds come, and so then ultimately, and if you just listen, it's kind of like the man who just builds a house. And that's kind of what I was doing. I was just building the house best I knew how. And it wasn't until a storm came along that I had to realize that my foundation wasn't weak, or I wasn't strong, right? It was weak.
Yeah.
And that was the wake up call for me.
Well, at least you had a foundation, like at least you had some sort of resemblance of, you grew up in the I grew up with like a total pagan. Like my parents were
that's
atheists.
amazing.
Yeah, my parents were. I mean, I literally opened the Bible. The first time I opened the Bible is when I came to church, and somebody says, "Hey, do you want to study the Bible?" And I'm like, I guess I can teach you a thing or two about spirituality, but sure, And but I had no idea, zero idea about it. But it changed my life, And
how long did it take? How did that experience go for you? Like, did it sort of click right away, or did it take a while?
Okay, so both, because apparently I was invited to the same church by 3 different people over 3 years. Around once a year, somebody, like, I remember those people, because they were sort of this smiley, I was like, you're a cult member, aren't you? And one was like a random two teenage girls, like, Jesus, in the subway,
right,
like, run along, little girls, and
totally offending your intellectual pride, right?
Totally. I was like, oh Lord, just rolling my eyes, trying to not be mean, and
That's
all
great.
of that. The second guy was a dancer, and so that I actually knew. He was in a sort of popular crew, and we were sort of we met at a rehearsal space, and he was like, man, I'm like, you're really happy. And he's sort of a stoner type, so he was normally sort of a little muted and not really smiley. So I'm like, what's up, man? And his name is Valentin. And he's like, man, I found this church. And I'm like, dude, just be careful. They're going to take all your money. And that's what I told him specifically, right? And then there's somebody else. And then basically what happened is, eventually I came to the same church. And all of those people came to me at one point during like a Sunday service. Like, hey, remember me? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so in a way, it took 2-3 years, because I wasn't even open to considering joining or coming into a service or anything. But then when I did, I was so messed up already. So I was so desperate, and I was actually clinically depressed, and lost a lot of weight. And I was thin. I mean, I am okay, sort of normal weight now. I was thin. And I was very, very thin, like unhealthily thin at the time. And I and I came and I was super critical and still arrogant of the singing. I didn't like the singing because I was a singer, and oh, the singing sucks, man, and but I liked what the preacher, how they preached from the Bible in a very practical way. I've never heard that before, because all I knew was like Eastern Orthodox, where they chant stuff that no one understands, and they sort of put some smoke up and the icons and the candles, and like, okay, like that. There's nothing practical in this. But these people were actually speaking, specific modern relevant stuff from the Bible. But you know how long it took me from that moment? 2.5 weeks. That's it. That's all it took.
That's pretty fast training course right there.
Yeah. 2.5 weeks. So in 2.5
You were
weeks.
motivated, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was just broken and desperate.
Yeah.
And when I
That's
read
sort of my point too.
when
Yeah.
the scriptures, when I was reading the scriptures, I would just break down in tears.
So did it have, that's what I was curious about. Did the word that the Bible, as you read it, have
Yeah.
that kind of impact on you immediately?
Yeah.
Because you don't have any context. You didn't know the Old Testament, the New Testament, all the books and the prophets, and you didn't have all of that context.
I didn't. No. Right? So it was not even historical context. It was just how plain and profound it was. And I remember, so not all of it made sense, obviously, because the language is a little different. But I remember reading the Sermon on the Mount, and I was just I just felt divine what Jesus was saying. Blessed are the brokenhearted. And I would cry. I would start reading and I start tearing up. And I'm like, what is this? I don't understand. Why am I reacting this way?
See, that is it. That's what I was going to say, connecting with. It's not just the words on page.
No.
There's something deeper in your soul that it connects with. And that's what I'm talking about. These soul, peace and joy in your soul doesn't come from a cognitive process. There's something. There's the Word of God is
it was supernatural,
like manna to the soul. It's that bread of life, right?
It's almost like there's a river of truth flowing into me, into these broken pieces and sort of gaps in my heart, these cracks in my heart, and I was just I don't understand what's going on, but I couldn't but it was like I wanted more.
I love that.
I
love that. So beautiful though, right? Like the beauty of it. Like when's the next, like what's more beautiful than that? You can put a Ferrari or a, Lamborghini right there in front, but when you're talking about, just the inner soul finding rest, man, that's a beautiful thing.
It was. And then I remember, because then we did a study around sin, and what sort of offended God, what God didn't want us to do, and I was puzzled and shocked because no one had ever explained that to me. And we went through like a list of things that were listed in Scripture, and I had literally done every single one of them. I didn't have one thing on the list that I haven't done. And check, I was like, check. Yeah, I was like, check. And I was like, gosh, I guess I was very clueless about all kinds of things, right? Oh my gosh, this is crazy. But I wasn't broken yet. I was like, okay, I don't quite understand like half of the stuff, why it's bad for me. But because I have this feeling of divine presence, I'm going to at least give it a chance to sort of process, because, and I was living like a rock star lifestyle. And I was like, does this mean that I need to change some of the stuff I'm doing these days? And people were like, yeah, sort of, and like, if you want to obey God, you have to give those things up and do the things that He wants you to do, and not do the things He doesn't want you to do.
So here's a question, right in your middle of this: could you have just read the Bible on your own and figured it out?
I don't think so, because I
figured out how to live. I mean,
no, I don't think so. Well, I think if I had stayed with it, maybe, but I didn't. I had no cultural context, so I really appreciated the guidance. When somebody said, "Hey, go here," yeah,
that's part of God's plan, and that's the beauty of it. You can't just do it like mono, straight up and down. It doesn't work, right? It's designed in such a beautiful way that you need somebody else
You need community. Yeah. Yeah.
To be your friend, like
It
to
is. And
literally
actually,
connect, right? Isn't that powerful? That in and of
it
itself
is.
is a beautiful design. But you've got imperfect people, to your point earlier,
Yes.
being used in a perfect way, which
Yeah. And the thing is, if I read it on
powerful.
my own, I am self-seeking enough and selfish and
Exactly.
to rationalize my
Uh-huh.
way out of a scripture, right? And
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened, because I was looking at that sin list and I was like, you know, I don't want to, I don't want to. I'm not married, and I don't understand these rules about sex. Sex is awesome, and
Hmm.
and they were like, well, it's not about the rules. It's about, this is the design, that you're designed to function a certain way, and this is reserved for the sanctity of marriage. And I was a pop star, so I was like, and I kid you not, I said, there's got to be some sort of,
Loophole.
a loophole, because of my professional. I actually said those things, I actually
That's
said,
awesome.
it's I'm so cool. I feel now embarrassed by it, but I was very sincere. I'm like, what I do, right, for a living. So this doesn't quite match the job description. And they were like, yeah, I don't think there's a clause for pop stars in the Bible. And I was like, huh, you know.
Oh, that's
Oh,
interesting.
it is, yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And
So
it's like, but to come at whatever needs to be changed, it's not so hard when you're seeing the joy and the peace. And
yeah,
like, yeah,
yeah, it was
it's like
irresistible.
it's
Yeah.
not, yeah, you can't really like
I was
not go
terrified
there,
though.
right?
Yeah, I was terrified. I was like, I don't even know if I can do this physically. Like, I don't
Hmm.
think I'm capable. And then eventually we did this study about the cross and about this great exchange, right?
Hmm.
Jesus dying for the cross for the sins of humanity and my sins specifically. And it dawned on me, and I just remember being very subdued and sobered, and it just made sense to me. Although it's such a strange story. Like, okay, so somebody 2,000 years ago died so that I can be free. It doesn't, like, it's very high level stuff, right? And I could easily brush it off and go, whatever, old tales. But in the moment, it just felt so true. It felt truer than anything else.
Hmm.
And it's faith, right? It's not logic.
Yeah, you
And
just knew.
I just knew, and I
It made
go,
sense.
yeah. And I remember like reading the account of the crucifixion and everything, and the person who was helping me study, he said, I think I was so visibly changed that he said, it looks like you've made up your mind about following Jesus. And I looked up at him and I said, I don't think I have a choice. And he goes, yeah, I think you've made up your mind. So that's how it happened. Yeah. And that's it. I was, from that moment on, I actually
It's
repented of
so
all my
interesting.
sins. Like
So interesting.
all of my musician friends thought I was out of my mind, and there's none of them believed it would last. None of them. They were like, "Yeah,
So
it's
now
just a phase."
answering that question, is faith important? How
Yeah,
would you answer that question?
it is the thing, and honestly, objectively, just even beyond these sort of personal, deeply personal internal decision, I can see now an arch of whatever 20. It's been what, 27 years, something like that. 29. Gosh, it was 95, December 95, whatever that the number is. Uh, the
Yeah,
arch of my life.
29,
How many?
29 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 29. The arch of my life has been completely directed in. I see the protection. I see the guidance. I see
Mm.
where I was saved from something or from someone or from myself. Um, I see all of it, and I see parallel lives of people who are around me, family members, friends, and how my trajectory varies from their trajectory in a much more positive way. Let's put it that way. And I know it's faith. I know it's faith, and like it's one of those things that
So it is the thing for you.
it's the thing. Yeah.
Everything. The one thing, as Jack Palance would say.
Yeah,
The
there's nothing
one
else.
thing.
Yeah, there's nothing more important. So it's foundational. So
See,
it's
interestingly enough, like we have such opposite experiences because you had no idea
yeah,
of biblical background. So I was raised where I had competed in Bible bowls in
Wow.
church. You would have literally teams, and they would throw a scripture out, and you'd have to nail where it is. Like it was, we were programmed as kids, competitively, to know the Bible. And it's interesting, it's really such a function of the heart, because even though I knew the Bible, it wasn't until later that it was activated.
Yeah.
And it was activated through pain. I literally, for me, it was, I knew what to do. For the most part, for the basic turnaround, I literally looked in the yellow pages, found a church, walked to the front of the building. Put my hands up, down on my knees. I'm a sinner. I literally needed help, right? I'm like, I'm going the wrong direction. I need change. And so I knew the source. I knew where to find it. I just had to want it.
Yeah. But it seems to me the story of most people, even if they don't come, pain is the thing that brought me.
Pain is the thing.
And for you, it's also the same thing.
It's not just it's pain, but then there's a pain plus a wisdom.
Yeah.
Like there's pain. There's, like in your case, it was pain plus wisdom to check out something, right? To find something, to begin seeking. Yeah. And for me, it was pain plus I had to go seek as well. And even after that, I had, pain way down the road as well. But I've always, the role of other people in our lives has been, is key. And so I think you have to be willing to sort of put yourself in this, kind of be humble enough to be an apprentice, if you will, right? To really learn those things in life, even though the Bible is powerful in and of itself.
I was actually just talking to a mutual friend of ours, yours and mine, about that last night. We went for a long walk on the trail, and this is a friend, dear friend, who became a Christian. I helped him become a Christian, and he became your friend as well. And then he doesn't know how to do church, so he sort of walked away from church, but he's actually kept his faith. And the conversation was about that, and I was saying, I'm really proud of you that you kept your faith, and yet I don't think you'll be able to progress and grow, and also won't be able to have impact on other people's lives in a consistent long-term way if you don't do it in community. And I'm like, you need to start going, and you need to start trusting, being vulnerable, and being around people who can guide you and give you wisdom, because you can't do it solo, even if you have the faith. And I'm proud of you for having faith, but you cannot do it solo. And so he's coming actually to church this Sunday.
Oh, good.
And but it was that conversation that you just cannot do it solo, even if you know, and even if you read your Bible, you pray, and you try to obey, and all of those things.
To that point, but another dimension would be like when I came back to church and my relationship with God, I needed somebody who was more mature to help guide me. And it just happened at the church. This is where you get church problems sometimes. This guy eventually left the church that I was really my key guy, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up becoming the leader. I was excited, and then they threw me in to lead because there was nobody else, I guess, that had the experience, or at least was new enough. I don't know what it was. Somehow I got thrown into the job, and I can tell you, it was just one. It wasn't long before I'm getting myself into trouble of some sort. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's so needed to have people in your life that are sort of spiritually mentors. And I know that I followed this guy to Charlotte, North Carolina. Actually, I didn't care what kind of job I was going to have after I graduated. I went to Charlotte, and that's because that's where he was, and I was going to be with him and then see what opened up. And IBM happened to open up there. Yeah, but it was interesting,
nice break.
That you just choose what's important. And I think that's kind of what I heard you say, is that you sort of say, what else am I going to do? Like you chose that this is the most important thing. Therefore, you probably had to rearrange your schedule, rearrange your priorities, rearrange a lot of things, and
everything. Yeah. And it's scary because once you rearrange, you go, okay, the things that were important to me before, am I gonna like completely lose them, and so you have to trust at some level. Okay, so that actually is a really good segue to the third talking point. So we talked about holistic success, meaning that we're multidimensional beings. If we want to flourish, we have to look at more than one thing, or two things, or even three things, right? And faith basically is the thing in the sense that it elevates who you are to the degree that you can actually have wisdom and understand all those things. I think the next thing in my radar, the next best thing and most important thing is family, and that is a really, so let's talk about family and sort of reframing your family story. And the reason for that is because all of us have painful family stories to one degree or another, and family still remains central. It's just so hardwired into us that either we sort of live out the broken story, of family until we're willing to reframe our family story, and that elevates us to this broader, fuller, joyful, peaceful success. And I know you have stories. You and I have both very dramatic stories. But the one that stands out to me, I want to ask you what stands out to you, among many, obviously, is that I come from 3 generations of broken homes. And that was sort of my next thing after finding faith, is figuring out family. Because I'm like, you know what? I detest divorce. Like Deb and I can watch a movie, and if there's adultery, I get emotionally offended. Like I get upset, and it's a movie, right? So she's like, calms me down. She goes, it's okay, honey. It's not going to happen to you. And I'm the one who says it's not going to happen to you because my dad cheated on my mom. And I was that guy as well. So you repeat your father's sins. And I remember going, I have to figure out family, and I have no idea where to start. And I love that that's the one thing. So faith was first, family was second. But family, I was this sponge. I was this, Karate Kid looking for Mr. Miyagi's everywhere. You're married, right? Okay, are you happy? Okay, tell me everything. That I would just force myself into like a third wheel into like family dinners of a married couple, and like, hey, here I am, like no double date, no nothing. I'm just here to prick your brain, and eventually it all paid off because I found Deb, and I've been married for now. We celebrated in September 25 years, and of course there's kids and parenting that are attached to that. But to me, if your home is solid, your job is going to be fine. You can if it's a major de-stressor, meaning if you have stress and if you want to be an entrepreneur, especially if you want to be an explorer, if you want to dare greatly, you're going to take risks, and your home is not okay, you're very vulnerable, and you might fail at levels that you don't want to fail. But if you have a great marriage, you can go out there and slay the dragons, and even if the dragons sort of kick your butt for a bit, you can come home and lick your wounds, and you have someone there. So to me, reframing your family story is a big deal, and I was able to break sort of this curse, the three generation curse, and I'm still determined to be the one who never repeats it, and hopefully my kids can maybe take a clue from my playbook. How does that resonate with you?
That's a great story. I mean, the way that you were seeking to learn, right? Because I don't think I ever had that. I was clueless. My mother died when I was young, and so all I had was my father.
Yeah.
And my sister was younger, right? So I was kind of the eldest, son. And so I think this is an area where I would say I've made a lot of mistakes. I think especially when you lose your compass, when you don't. And this is a great segue back to the question of why faith is important, right? Because there was a time when faith wasn't a real part of my life, and I made some bad decisions during that time. And so it's sort of how do you recover from bad decisions? And so reframing the family for me had a lot of implications, both I would say we all have programming, right? Our physical families, we're biologically, we're programmed. And as much as we don't want to be like our father or mother, we're going to be
Yep.
like them, right?
Yep.
At some level, until we learn to mature and shift things. And having said that, so there's just, I think for me, again, without having that moral compass, if you will, or a set of, you know, kind of rules of engagement, right? So it's really kind of a free for all, and that's why there's so many failures in today's marriages, right? And divorce is a normal part of many people's lives. So I appreciate your perspective, and it's the right perspective. And I can say that it's taken me, I had to like learn that, right? And learn it. But it came back. I mean, I couldn't have learned. I don't think I would have ever been, well, I'll take that back. I think at some level that, I was a good husband, even during those times that, for a long time, for maybe 10, 12 years, and then you're not. And then something happens and then you screw it up, right? So it's like you can be a great husband for 10, 12 years and then all of a sudden make a bad decision, right? Or because you don't have the foundation. And that's where I speak. I didn't have the foundation anymore. And I think because of that lack of foundation, make poor decisions leads to poor outcomes. And so, family, I guess my take on this would be that there's always hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Reframing.
And I would say, I want to reframe it in that you just don't give up. And I think sometimes people have given up on love, right? Mm-hmm. Because they don't know how to love and they don't know how to build family.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to. And so I think there's so much failure because, back to that last point, you've got to have a foundation that actually is that you can build on to create something that's wiser and bigger than you. Like, I'm not smart enough to have a 40 or 50 year marriage. You at least pursued it and gained wisdom from other people. I wasn't, as I was sort of relying on my own wisdom. And so I think that the only way that I have hope of being a great husband and actually a sustainable reframing of the family is to live in community where there's accountability. I have people like you that I can talk to. I have others I can talk to. I can invest. And I have to say, though, it's really sad because sometimes we don't take those, we don't go after it until we've had a major failure. And I wish, at some level I was better at having been proactive, right, at seeking like you were. In my case, it wasn't. But the good news is that if you don't give up, that's lesson number one. You can always reframe your family.
Yeah,
you never have to.
Agree.
As long as you don't give up. And then you have to get around people who, like say, do have great families. And then ultimately, I believe fundamentally that the only way to have a great family is to live inside this foundation of knowing how to be great humans, right? God gives us.
That's exactly that's exactly what I was saying. Our friend, yours and mine. I was like, dude, you want to find a wife? He goes, yeah. Do you want to know that she's the one? Yeah. Do you want to marry her? Yeah. Do you want to stay married? Yeah. All of those things are very, very hard. And you cannot do it alone. You just can't, man. So I was just leaning in on him going, dude, you're dead in the water if you don't have that. You have to engage.
DOA, like with an exclamation point. And I know some people who, who there's all kinds of compromise that people do that stay together, right? I've seen that. And that's, but if you want to truly love a woman well, and vice versa, you can't do it without the love of God.
Yeah, I agree. And without community and guidance.
So we're connecting your point 2 and point 3, I think.
It's just point 1 to holistic, right?
Yeah. I mean, they say happy wife, happy life, but it's really bigger than that, right? But that is a key part of it. So I think that we have to learn how to be great men, right? And which means a lot of things like humility, which means being able to say you're wrong and being able to know the right path and to seek the right path and have people that you can go to, because even with all of that, it's still hard at times, right?
Yeah.
You still need to, it's not like,
it's very hard. It doesn't get
not like
easier.
We don't have arguments or not like we don't have difficulty. but you forge things when there's a commitment. And I think that's the message for me is you've got to, if you're going to build a foundation, like for me, for reframing, for me, meant that I needed to have a woman that actually had the same perspective in terms of, what it means to build a great life together. And it required faith. So I had that experience before with, my wife didn't have faith, and that was difficult.
That was painful.
So, and that pain, that pain just lives on and on and on. It's like, so it's something like, it's so important to reframe now. Don't wait.
Don't wait. Yeah. But also reframe now the past. You can reframe the past as lessons learned and grace and second chances and 50th chances and all of that. And that's sort of my experience as well. Like
it ain't over till it's over.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many regrets, and you say that I sort of figured it out early, but I didn't. I mean, earlier maybe, but I still have, one daughter who will never have a mom and dad in the same family. No, I can't fix that, and so I mean, to me, it's still too late. I hope I didn't have to inflict so much pain on myself and others around me, and including my.
But that's real. Daughter. I mean, listen, I don't know anybody that gets out of this life without some regrets.
No.
The question is, are we fixing them? Are we getting better, right? And are we trying to do what we can to take responsibility for the ones that we've made, right?
So I know you have a stop at 1 hour. So if you're listening to this still ramblings for an hour straight, you must be resonating. God bless you. You must be resonating with what the stories we're telling. So actually, I want to put something on the screen. If you're listening to this, you'll see it. We actually developed this really great tool called the Xponential Score, which is a 360 assessment of all kinds of dimensions of life, and it's a great thing. You can go and get it for free. Xponential.life/score, Xponential without the E, and you can see a score around 11 different dimensions, and it's actually a really good tool for people to sort of evaluate where they're at and then make some decisions on what to do from there. So with that being said, Brandon, as always, a beautiful thing to hang out with you, and we'll tackle a couple of other dimensions of life in the next episode. All right. So you guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe, share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Thanks again.